This last social anxiety group orientation video will help you to get started in developing an exposure hierarchy so that you can break the cycle of social anxiety and give your brain a chance to learn new things with experience, which is the very best way that it learns. Doing social exposures to teach your amygdala that you are actually safe in social situations, even when you aren't perfect, and that you can actually cope with uncomfortable social situations and can experience less anxiety the more and more you do them is a big part of breaking free from social anxiety. You'll do this by creating an exposure hierarchy and working through it throughout the course of group. And you can see how the hierarchy looks on page 4 of your workbook. It looks like a thermometer with numbers 0 through 100 on it, and you can use those numbers to think about how anxious an exposure might make you feel. A rating of 0 would mean no anxiety at all, for example, while 100 would mean the most anxious you've ever felt. A 50 rating is in the middle, meaning you'd feel anxious doing that exposure, but you're confident you'd be able to get through it. People see the most progress when they have an exposure idea or two for each number slot on their hierarchy and work their way up throughout the course of group and practicing those exposure items. There are some tips you can use to plan effective exposures that will really help your social anxiety the most. Exposures number one should help you to get closer to your goals and the things you care about. So, for example, if you really wanted to get closer to people and open up more to them, some exposure items might be about ways that you can gradually open up to people in your life more than you already are. Exposures are also about approaching the things that you avoid. So, in that list of things that you avoid on the previous page, if you find yourself avoiding certain situations or people or places out of social fear, those would be good things to put on your hierarchy as you try to approach those situations. Good exposures are also done without safety behaviors or with reduced safety behaviors. So keep those safety behaviors you listed in mind so that you can identify and write down some ways that you can lower those safety behaviors and even do exposures that are making mistakes on purpose. And really great exposures are ones that you can repeat a few times to really teach your amygdala and help it to learn new beliefs. And it does this the best when exposures are repeated multiple times. Some general ideas could be raising your hand to answer a question when you aren't even 100% sure of the answer, or starting a conversation with friends at lunch, asking someone for directions, or going through the in person checkout line at a store. It can even be complimenting somebody or complimenting on people's social media posts, inviting peers to hang out, or telling a story about yourself to friends instead of asking them all the questions. On page 5 to 6 of your workbook, you can find even more exposure ideas that you can use to fill out your own exposure hierarchy. And before we end, I want to take a minute to give you the top 3 expectations of group. The first and foremost, most important one is that you be yourself or and who you want to be. We welcome authenticity and awkwardness and imperfection, and we know that all of us are imperfect. And so, anytime you can go into group and still share and participate, being imperfect and making mistakes is so welcome and important to progress. We also do ask that you keep your camera on because it protects everyone's privacy in group and it's really needed for social exposures as part of that growth process and being seen by other people. We also ask that you try to step outside of your comfort zone. So you'll never be forced to do anything, but if you are feeling uncomfortable and anxious, that is a great sign that you're on the right track, even in exposing yourself to participating in this group. And also, group is where you will learn skills, but the biggest change happens when you practice skills and do exposures outside of the group. So it is expected that you'll practice exposures outside of the group and then use the group for support in being able to talk about how those experiences went for you. There are 168 hours in a week, but only one of those is in group. So it's important to use some of the other time outside a group to help manage social anxiety. And that will really, really help. We ask that you participate for 24 weeks if possible to the best of your ability so that you can see the full benefit of the group. So please take time to fill out your own exposure hierarchy on page 4, using the ideas on page 5 and 6 as well to help you fill out each step of that ladder. And take a minute to read through what you can expect in group on page 7 if you'd like even more details. We really look forward to meeting you and for you to be a part of this group.